Thank you, Brady. I want to welcome everybody to today's Team Florida webinar. My name is Chris Laurie. I'm with HNTV, and I will be your moderator today. We have a great panel lined up, so I expect to hear some questions at the end that they can help answer for us. But the title of this is All Electronic Tolling AET on the Fly. So just a little background, as everybody knows, when we ended 2019 and we're coming into 2020, the economy was doing very well. Our stock market was very high. Our unemployment rate was very low. Traffic and revenue for the toll agencies were doing well and rising. And nobody probably expected what was ahead, which is, if anybody could have predicted it, I'd like to know who it was, because I never saw it coming. So as we started 2020 and we started hearing about these sicknesses coming out of China, and then all of a sudden they start spreading across the globe, hitting Italy very bad, and then finally hitting the US, hitting major cities like New York and others. And then we started hearing things like stay-at-home orders, closing restaurants, carry-out only, everybody wear a mask. Well, this just not hit everybody personally, but it hit the toll agencies around the country. And a lot of them were grappling with, what do I do to protect my toll attendants on the roadside? What do I do to protect my customers? And so seemingly overnight, a lot of these agencies had to flip the switch and turn into an all-electronic tolling facility. So with that being done, obviously there's a lot of business rules they had to look at. They had to look at the public outreach. They had to look at a lot of things very quickly. So today we have 3 toll executives joining us to give us a glimpse of what they encountered as they went through this process, and also what does the future bring as far as bringing people back or not. And so with that, what I'd like to do is open it up to our first panelist here, Laura Kelly with Central Florida Expressway Authority. Laura has more than 30 years of experience in executive transportation management, helping shape national, state, and local policy. In 2014, she was named Central Florida Expressway's first executive director, managing the daily operations of the agency. Under her leadership, the agency adopted a customer-first toll policy, resulting in the cancellation of a scheduled 15% toll increase, expanded customer services by opening drive-up reload lanes on the expressways, piloting the visitor toll pass program in partnership with Orlando International Airport, and saved commuters millions of dollars through toll discount programs. Ms. Kelly also has overseen CFX's installations of safety and technology improvements, including equipping expressways with wrong-way driver detection systems. Ms. Kelly's prudent management style led CFX to secure federal financing for the Wekiwa Parkway, resulting in a savings to the agency of $260 million and reducing the time to deliver by 2 years. Meanwhile, CFX's financial position has strengthened and bond ratings upgraded with Ms. Kelly at the helm. Laura, with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chris, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate this afternoon. If we could go to the next slide. CFX still collects cash on most of our 125-mile system. In 2018, CFX opened its first electronic tolling facility, the Wekiwa Parkway, which is about 10 miles long. In late 2019, CFX acquired the Point Siena Parkway, which is a 7-mile all-electronic toll road located in Osceola County. Next slide. In coordination with Nicola LaCourie at the Florida Department of Transportation, CFX pulled toll attendants from the lanes and suspended cash collection and reload lanes. We also closed our service center on March 19th. The pay-by-plate rate was reduced to the cash rate with no additional fees. Our dynamic message signs became critical communication tools, directing cash customers to keep driving and pay later. Next slide. And also alerted them when cash lanes and reload lanes were reopened. Next slide. Since March, public messages for safety alerts, stay-at-home orders, and curfew reminders have been displayed, as well as messages of gratitude for our first responders and medical professionals. Next slide. On June 1st, in coordination with the Florida Department of Transportation, toll attendants returned to our cash and reload lanes with masks, gloves, and vigilant cleaning protocols. And a shout out goes out to our toll attendant partners, AECOM, who helped keep our toll attendants employed during this difficult time. We have a 260 toll attendants that work throughout our system. We've only had one toll attendant that tested positive a couple of weeks ago. They were quarantined for 14 days and are in very good health today. I'm glad to report. We've been very fortunate. Next slide. On this graph, the blue line represents the percent increase in pay-by-plate transactions compared to the same month in 2019. The orange line represents the percentage increase or decrease in pay-by-plate revenue collected compared to the last year. As you can see, our collection rate for pay-by-plate is lagging at this time. And as a rule, pay-by-plate normally is about 14%, 13 to 14% of our overall revenue collection. Next slide. Over the coming months, we will continue to collect more data to evaluate the financial implications of all electronic tolling for this brief period of time. On July 1st, 2020, CFX implemented a new pay-by-plate rate structure throughout our entire system. Designed to cover the cost of pay-by-plate program, the rate is now double the electronic rate. And as a reminder, this program was set in motion back in the fall of 2019, long before COVID was even a conversation. So we are fortunate that the timing of this worked out, because I believe it's going to be very important as we begin to try to recover our costs with pay-by-plate. We are now in the process of updating our 25-year master plan. For the first time, all electronic tolling will be evaluated in this plan. The all electronic tolling experience in March, April, and May should be helpful as we evaluate these options in the upcoming master plan. That concludes my presentation. Of course, I'm glad to answer your questions.
Thank you, Laura. I do have one question for you before we move on. You know, you talked about your video tolling, toll by plate throughout your presentation, and how is that either reinforced, reshaped, or done things differently for CFX and the use of the video tolling, and any lessons learned that you have for the future outside of the pandemic use of it?
That's a good question, because when we had to implement pay-by-plate in March, we were fortunate enough to have been caught up in our pay-by-plate reads, and I would say have multiple options when it comes to keeping up with your read rate, because I think staying up to date with that is going to have a big impact on collections.
Okay, thank you. So now what we're going to do for the audience, this is a participation for everybody out there. We're going to do a poll for everybody to answer. And so it's going to pop up on your screen here in just a second. And so everybody could take a chance to turn in your vote here. Question is, when do you predict traffic volumes returning to pre-COVID numbers? December 20, June of 21, December of 21, or post 21? It's interesting if you've been following NREX, they're looking at the traffic over the country and seeing what they are seeing in different parts of the country. Florida is obviously part of that, and their recent report that just came out of the bottom 10 metro areas, Florida has 3 of them. Out of that, you have Miami at the top, Orlando, and one that was a little shocking on there was Lakeland, Florida. So we'll see how it compares to how the TNR people also track the numbers out there, because they're usually a little more conservative. So with that, we'll end the polling here and share the results with everybody. And predominantly, people believe that by June of 2021, that we will be back to pre-COVID numbers. Now, just out of curiosity, if any of the panelists want to have any feedback on that based on what you're seeing on your facilities in your area. None of the panelists have anything they want to add?
Chris, in Pennsylvania, we're told it could take us 4 years to get back to January 2020 numbers.
And I can share with you our traffic and revenue consultant's view of this. Because there's been so much work at home and we've learned all the tools of meeting remotely, there's a belief that a certain percentage of our commuter traffic, and CFX is a huge commuter traffic system, that about 2.5% of our traffic will be impacted because more people will work from home. So that's an important element of, you know, when traffic will come back, I think.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's a good point, Laura. Is there's a lot of people out there that they don't know what the new normal will be when we finally get out of this. Things will change, and where will we create a new baseline for everybody out there? So that's a very valid point. So next we'll move on to Nicola LaCorey. With nearly 20 years of professional experience in the transportation industry, Nicola LaCorey brings a profound knowledge and passion to her role as the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer for Florida's Turnpike Enterprise. The enterprise is one of the premier toll agencies in the country with revenues of approximately $1 billion and operates under the Florida Department of Transportation. A certified public accountant, Nicola was tapped to lead Florida's Turnpike in August of 2019 after serving as the CEO of the Sunrail in the greater Orlando area and navigating a successful startup for this commuter rail system. As the current Executive Director and CEO of Florida's Turnpike Enterprise, Nicola is responsible for more than 2,400 staff members who work together in managing a statewide toll system of 500 centerline miles from Jacksonville to Miami. The Turnpike Enterprise serves a diverse customer service or base that ranges from daily commuters to tourists to commercial carriers. Since returning to the enterprise, Nicola has taken on numerous challenges, including the agency's longstanding goal of national interoperability. Florida's Turnpike Enterprise recently joined the EasyPass network, which joins two of the largest toll account customer bases, SunPass and EasyPass. The move is a significant step towards national interoperability and will substantially complete interoperability along the East Coast. A fan of numbers, Nicola received her accounting degree from Auburn University and a master's degree from Troy University. She can often be heard chanting War Eagle during football season or randomly during any season. And one last thing I will say, Nicola, if we have football this fall, I may stand with you and chant War Eagle too, even though I'm not a War Eagle. So I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks so much. Yeah, college football is at risk, which may send me into a tailspin. I'm not quite sure. So I'm wearing my mask for college football. So what I want to do first, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Brady, for asking me to participate on this panel. I think it's really important that Laura and I presented together because we were in complete lockstep as we embarked on this AET on the fly. We wanted to make sure that the messages to our common customers were the same, and that we approached every aspect of this in a similar manner with our customers in focus. What I wanted to do is I really wanted to kind of highlight the diversity of our system. And so if you take a look at the map, there's a lot of different colors, there's a lot of different facility types on there, but it really is to show just how diverse tolling in general is across the state of Florida, from the Panhandle down to the Keys. And so the boxes at the top of the screen, the transaction information, the mileage information, the toll facility information, is broken out by AET and non-AET facilities, but that data only pertains to facilities on the map that are green or green outline or brown outline. Those are the DOT facilities. They're either part of the Turnpike system or they are DOT facilities, DOT operated facilities, DOT facilities where there's a lease purchase agreement that's in effect. So that's what the numbers represent. And so as you can see, we already had a mix. You know, for 10 years we've been operating, nearly 10 years we've been operating all electronic with our partners in South Florida. Just earlier this year, we completed the AET conversion of our longest contiguous section right now, and that is the Toll 589, the Veterans and Suncoast in West Central Florida. So those are significant aspects of our system. We also have up in Jacksonville, we have the First Coast Expressway, which is under operation and which opened as an all-electronic facility. So I think it's really important to understand that when we were talking about AET on the fly, not only did we have some facilities, which means we had some customers that were already in an AET environment, but we had cash customers that for many years, as much as we try to convince them to get a SunPass or an ePass and be a transponder base, they have chosen not to, and they have their reasons for doing that. And so we needed to be very mindful of our customer base, especially in this time. So I think that was extremely important. We wanted to get the messaging right, as Laura mentioned, the in-lane messaging, the dynamic message signs that were throughout our facilities really had to communicate to those customers what to expect when they got to a toll plaza. We wanted to make sure people understood that we were still operating the toll facilities. We had a number of questions about whether we had waived the tolls altogether rather than just converting to all electronic. So the messaging had to be very, very careful. At the same time, you're removing a method of payment for a certain group of customers, and so you want to be mindful of that. And so we went ahead and waived the administrative charge, the $2.50 per invoice fee for customers, because that is to recover that cost of video billing, and we didn't want to burden our customers with that administrative charge while we were in these modified operations. Probably one of the most challenging things that we had is, as this chart indicates, the facilities that are AET or non-AET, I think it's important to note that we have a large section of our system that is currently undergoing an AET conversion. So there is active construction going on for an AET conversion. That includes the ticket system from the Lantana Toll Plaza along the southern part of our system all the way up to the Three Lakes Toll Plaza. And then from Three Lakes all the way up to the northern terminus at Wildwood. All of that is under active construction for an AET conversion. We also had 3 plazas in the Broward County area that were just on the cusp of flipping over to AET. And so we had to accelerate the conversion for those facilities. So that was done very quickly, all at the same time as we were modifying our collection activities. There were a number of things that we had to consider as we were doing this AET on the fly, and that was the impact to the toll plaza personnel. And so similar to Central Florida Expressway, we do have a lot of contract staff, and so we worked very closely with our partner Faneuil. They really answered the call in removing the collectors and keeping them gainfully employed during this period of time. But we also have plaza managers that are DOT employees, and so we wanted to ensure that they had the opportunity to continue working also. And so one of the other challenges that we received was from the Department of Economic Opportunity, and they were having some issues processing unemployment claims for Floridians who suddenly found themselves out of work, and the system had some challenges. So we took those toll facility managers and assistant managers, and we converted them to data entry processors for the Department of Economic Opportunity. I think that shows, one, the flexibility of our workforce, which I think has been incredibly important throughout this whole situation, but two, it really shows that as a state we really came together and tried to determine where the needs were and how we could adjust ourselves to meet the need at hand. And obviously processing unemployment claims, we processed north of 15,000 claims in a 3-month period, and that was important to the residents of Florida, certainly those that have been impacted by something that that again none of us saw coming. So I think that was an important part of our process. One of the other things that I wanted to point out, and Laura touched on it too, is the toll rates. And so for most of our system, modifying the toll rate for AET on the fly was very simple. The cash rate and the toll by plate rate were equivalent, and we didn't have any issues. But on the ticket system, obviously we needed to have an origin, and we wouldn't have an origin because we weren't dispensing tickets during that time. And so we really had to revert to our business rules for minimum tolling on the ticket system, meaning that we assume that you entered the ticket system at the nearest toll plaza, not the furthest toll plaza. So obviously that has an impact on our operations. And so with that facility being under construction for AET, we did start to take a look at, not knowing how long we were going to be in these modified operations, how do we accelerate and how could we possibly stand up that AET conversion faster. So we do, should we need it, we do have that plan developed. But I highlight that because there were any number of plans that we had to develop on the fly very quickly. Some we did move forward with implementation, and others we have them on standby should we need them. We did return the collectors to the lanes over a staggered period of time, but really around the Memorial Day holiday and in June. And we have had a few cases during that time. None of them were contracted while the person was working at the facility, and they were isolated incidents. We close down the plaza, do the deep clean, do the contact tracing, and then resume operations when it's safe to do so. So we do have a plan for dealing when there are identified cases. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Nicola. Just a question for you, because you said you and Laura worked very closely together, especially here in Central Florida, so that the customers see a seamless transition and not, one that they don't sometimes understand what is E-Pass, what is SunPass. They just know they're on a toll facility, especially your 417 facility, that people just go over county lines and don't realize they're changing necessarily one agency to another. So as you went through your decision to go to the AET, how much was not just internal to the agency, but potentially outside public, influence from the governor's office or outside forces that you had to consider as you were moving forward? I'm sure a lot of people were trying to pull you in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, it certainly, think about, for all of those participating today and watching, think about, just try to rewind to the end of February when, this was in the news and it wasn't really impacting us, but how was it impacting us, to the beginning of March. The first week of March, we had started to implement work from home for our office staff, and we were starting to prepare plans. And then how things moved from the first week of March to the second week of March to the third week of March. Every day brought new information, and so you're trying to respond and react, and obviously safety is always the first and foremost, the safety of personnel, the safety of the traveling public. And so you always make those decisions with, you know, with whatever limited information you have. You make the best of that information, and you do it with the mindset of safety being first and foremost. We answered a lot of questions. We internally debated any number of scenarios to try to determine the best path forward. But, you know, ultimately you just want to make sure that you have that message that you send out to customers, to the general public, and let them know what you're doing and why you're doing it, and then the follow through and answering the questions as you go. We certainly did get a number of questions and comments from the traveling public indicating, you know, why do you have the collectors in the lanes? And so certainly there was this aspect. I think everyone was kind of questioning any interaction they had and asking, you know, should we have modified operations? And you just rewind back to March. I think it's very challenging to do because so much has transpired over the last several months. But we were all gathering information as quickly as we could and trying to make the most sense of it that we could with the limited information that we had.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll move to our next polling question. So this one will get a little more to your personal belief about what you're going to do. So how likely are you to travel personally, and we're not talking professionally, by an airplane versus using your personal vehicle in the next 6 months? You know, now they've implemented that you must wear a mask on planes. They're trying to social distance, but as those of you that travel in planes quite a bit, it's very difficult to social distance on a plane. I heard last week there was some airlines that were going to stop allowing you to do carry-on luggage in order to expedite the people getting on and off the plane and reduce the amount that they interact with each other. So that even is still probably more changes to come. So let's slowing down now. So this one's a little more different. It appears that there's still people that say there's no way that they're going to get on an airplane to get next to somebody and breathe the same air that they filter through an airplane. That's not shocking. It's probably the closest that you'd ever be traveling with somebody outside of the mass transit systems that we see in our larger cities. So that's interesting. So the next thing that we'll do is we'll move on to our final panelist. Mark Compton comes to us from Pennsylvania. Mark is the Chief Executive Officer of the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. And Mark is out of Mannheim, Pennsylvania, and began serving as Chief Executive Officer of the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission on February 1 of 2013. He's a professional with more than 2 decades of public and private sector experience in transportation, administration, government affairs, and construction. Mark holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Penn State University, and he previously served as PennDOT's Deputy Secretary of Administration, overseeing 8 bureaus within the agency. And then before joining PennDOT, Mark was the Director of Government Affairs for American Infrastructure, a heavy civil construction company in Worcester, Pennsylvania. And then prior to that, he worked in various public and private operations, focusing largely on transportation, construction, and economic development. Mark has been an active participant in the International Bridge, Tunnel, and Turnpike Association. And since 2015, Mark has served on the IBTTA's Board of Directors. He's currently serving as the first Vice President, and next year he will take the helm as the President of 2021 for IBTTA. So Mark, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Chris. And Laura, Nicola, it's great to be on this panel with you two. You know, very rarely in my life and in my career have I ever been able to be associated with the cool kids. But being up here with you, I finally get to be part of the cool kids. Now, I'm sure it's building your reputation, but it's certainly helping mine. But Nicola, before we get started, I'm just going to take a drink of this from this Penn State mug. I don't know anything about a War Eagle chant, but I can tell you we are rings pretty loud up here. Great to be with you all. And you can see there by the first slide exactly what what is the Pennsylvania Turnpike. This year, starting October 1st of this year, we will turn 80 years old as an organization. You can see the length and the revenue of 19. Clearly, that's going to be off as we look at this fiscal year. And the one number on this page that is still tough for me to see, and what we'll talk about today, is that full-time employee number of 1343, because that is a drop from what was 492 as a result of the action that was taken on June 2nd. I know we'll talk through that. So, Chris, next slide, please. This gives you a sense of the depth that is Pennsylvania Turnpike. The original section was really from about, I'm sitting here in Harrisburg, which is also known as the Miami of the Northeast, by the way, if you've ever been to Harrisburg. But from where we were here in Harrisburg, about 20 miles from here is Carlisle. That's the original termination point, and then from out to Irwin, which is near Pittsburgh. So that was the original 160 miles, and you can see the expansion that's taken place. That is now the 552 miles of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Next slide. We obviously had a real trough as related to traffic and revenue related to what has been COVID-19. The worst work week that we experienced was the first week in April, where our traffic was 62% off. So as we sit here today, at the end of last week, our revenue is down $160 million from where it should be, where it was projected to be this time, based on the numbers from last year. And what we understand is that this event for us could be about a $400 million event. What we're hearing from our traffic and revenue folks, which I get can tend to be conservative, is that for revenue, based on future toll increases, it could take us 2 years to get back to January numbers. And actual traffic, it could take about 4 years to get back to numbers. And really, a lot of those are for the reasons that Laura laid out. Think about what you're doing in your own organizations about your commuting patterns. Who's going to be coming into the office every day? Who's going to be coming? Who's going to be doing that sort of travel? But you're talking about universities and schools, whether they open or not. That has a big parts to do with our commuter traffic. And in the East, down in the Philadelphia area, we live and die by commuter traffic. So until that comes back, we're concerned about what our numbers will look like. Next slide, Chris. So we too, like from what you've heard, have taken a multifaceted, phased approach at how we have dealt with the pandemic. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of things there that we could probably spend a lot of time on. And I know we want to talk about the AET piece, but just, you know, if you think about the Fred Rogers quote, "In crisis, think about the helpers." We talk about what the devastation this has caused, but I'm so proud of our team for the way that the folks here at the PTC and our consultant partners have really come together. And just one anecdote. So we have a customer service center that is made up of Turnpike employees. It's here in the building. And as you think about that difference that was that middle weekend in March, right before St. Patrick's Day, when typically we're getting excited for college basketball in the tournament. We're talking about these type of plans and contingency plans at no level. And I got to tell you, when I sat there that day, I was figuring we're going to be in this for about 2 weeks, and hopefully we'll get back to normal. And as we're talking about it, we're thinking about how we're going to have these customer service reps work. Because heretofore, they've always had to work in the office. They've always had to report. They were essential and required to be here every day. So snowstorm, whatever the weather was, they were expected to be here to answer calls. But we're sitting around and talking with our chief technology officer. He says, you know, Mark, you give me 2 hours. I'll give those folks laptops. We'll get them trained. They'll work from home. Just let me train them. Give us 2 hours. We'll have them trained up and they can work from home. I said, of course, Bob, go for it. So we did. And within the course of those 2 hours, he had them trained. And they've been operating, haven't missed a call ever since. And there are stories like that, I'm sure, in all the organizations that you're a part of. There's a lot of those stories too. So just to the Fred Rogers quote, look for the helpers, we've had a lot. So you can see all the multifaceted things that we've put in place. The top one is the one that clearly is something that was a very tough event for us. So if you think through that weekend, on Thursday night, the weekend before, we made the call based on the guidance we were getting from our Department of Health that it was best to get the collectors out of the lanes. And we were in a much different position. And Chris, if you can turn to the next slide, because AET, what was our plan for the future. So by October of 2021, we had planned as an organization to be what we called AET in place. So that is the first phase of our AET, which is to do it at the current tolling locations. And we'd still be trip-based at that point, with the ultimate goal by 2023 to start getting gantries up across the system and then no longer use the interchanges for tolling points. So that Thursday we made the decision. And another component about the helpers or the folks coming together, by Monday night, the signage was changed, the software was updated, and we flipped the switch on Monday night and went into the mode of all electronic tolling. So we like what Nicola and Laura said, we did it by toll by plate, of course by Easy Pass. It was an interesting test bed because if you think through our preparations for what was going to be October 2021, you think about where we thought the signage was going to be required, we thought about all the planning, all the components. Well, we flipped that switch and sure enough, it worked. And sure enough, our customers figured it out. And sure enough, we were operating in all electronic tolling mode. So about a month into that, we started to put our restart plan together. And as we started to talk to the commissioners, we realized that for us, and really in large part because we had the in-lane infrastructure in place for what was going to be October 2021, what was holding us back, or what the timeline of the critical path, was the expansion of our customer service center. It was the ability to expand our customer service center to get the call center ready for the volumes that we expected when we hit October 2021. So all of the infrastructure was already in place. So as we started to put the restart plan together, a couple of things kept coming up. One was safety. So it was, again, the continued safety of our employees and the continued safety of the traveling public. And here in Pennsylvania, the guidance has been under a red phase, a yellow phase, and a green phase. And the state hit the green phase, but as we researched the green phase, didn't mean go. It didn't mean things were normal. What it meant was if you can still telework, you should. What it meant was if you can still have touchless contact with your customers, you should. Those are things by pure definition is AET. So we looked at those components. And then we also tried to deal with what we would do on the operational side, based on the fact of if that interchange, and we too had about 3 or 4 employees at locations test positive. If we're required to shut that interchange down, what's that mean for a ticket system? It's tough to operate a ticket system when you're taking individual interchanges out of circulation. So with those 2 points, as well as the revenue losses, which this first year saved us about $40 million, and next year will save us about $60 million. The staff recommended and the commissioners aligned around not having toll collectors come back, and for us to maintain our AET for the future. So that's what we've been operating under since the middle of March, and the collectors have been gone now from the organization since the middle of June. And just a couple key findings is that if you can imagine how this system looked, our system was a very complicated system to new customers, because we did have some interchanges that weren't manned, so they were Easy Pass only, and we also had some locations where you couldn't surrender a ticket. So now the system is open to all employees, and with this traffic dip, what we found too is our Easy Pass penetration is up over 85%, which prior to the pandemic was closer to 80. So that too has helped, and the collection rate on the main line has really mirrored what we've done on the pilots, which is phases that we've started back in 2016 with what we call the DRB, which is Delaware River Bridge. So it's still early, as you can imagine, but all things related to the collections are mirroring what we're seeing on the pilots. So with that, Chris, I will shut my mouth, and I and the other panelists stand by for your questions.
All right. I'll ask you one question, Mark, and actually you kind of hit on it there towards the end about your Easy Pass penetration. And I'll ask this of you, and then Nicola and Laura, if you want to, if have anything to add to it, feel free to. But your transponders, you said it went up, so I'm curious if you're going to plan on, or you got a marketing campaign. I mean, you were already going AET, so you're obviously wanting to push as much as you can to go to transponder-based tolling. But is there any type of strategies that you're working on with marketing or different ways to try to push that up, especially now in the hindsight? I'll say hindsight, we're not over it yet, but with the pandemic, you know, and people may say, you know, maybe I really do want to go to a transponder. So what anything new, or what were you doing in your process for going to AET, and did you now advance it because, oh, now we're a year and a half earlier and we need to get done?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things like that. And we've had a pretty robust campaign on Easy Pass, which we are even in this tough economic environment, needing to ramp up based on the fact that in all these places, the less invoices you send, clearly the better. So we are doing that. And the other component to this too, which has been helpful since 2016, is anyone who's gotten a toll by plate invoice from us has had the opportunity to get the reduced rate if they sign up for Easy Pass with that invoice. That has been helpful as well. So the marketing campaign, the invoice piece, but also too, there's a lot of things that we've had on the docket to get done in the next 18 months, which we have to ramp up, which is helping in the unbanked communities, having retail locations where folks can pay their tolls, having an app available that enables you to, if you don't have to send a bill, you get a reduced rate. All those sort of things now are certainly on the front burner.
Okay. Nicola or Laura, you have anything to add?
Well,
Go ahead, Laura.
Because we implemented a new pay-by-plate rate July 1st, one of our strategies was to post the rates very clearly at every plaza and ramp. So the prices that customers pay are on the roadside, very clear. So, and in the past, pay-by-plate's kind of been a passive way to pay, but now the doubling of the price is on the roadway very frequently. So they're constantly reminded that they're paying more. And we don't know yet, but I hope that translates into more transponders on the road. Too early to tell yet.
Okay.
I agree with Laura. It will be interesting to see, you know, what that looks like with that pay-by-plate rate out there, because I think that's probably the most meaningful. It is that reminder to folks that that there is that differential. We have a similar program where we allow folks, if they received a toll-by-plate invoice, to convert their account to a SunPass account if they choose to, and receive the lower toll rate, on average about 24% lower. And so in looking at our April statistics, 10,717 customers opted into that program. So they paid their full bill, received the reduced rate, and then we kind of wanted to track them, and we'll continue to track them over time to see if these numbers move. But in breaking it down, about 42% of those that converted, we haven't seen any additional toll activities. So that tells us something about those that, you know, weren't already a SunPass customer. They really are in that occasional, infrequent bucket that we talk about so often. So we haven't seen any additional toll activity really to gain some information as to, you know, did we convince them to convert for the long term. So we'll keep an eye on those. About 25% of that 10,000 did convert, put their transponder in their windshield, and we've been processing them as transponder-based transactions since then. About 20% have been mixed, so they put their transponder in the windshield, and they've had some T-tolls, but they've also had some I-tolls. So not sure, they might be hand holders, you know, quite frankly, it might be just holding the tag. And then 13% have been image tolls only. So their account remains good, but they remain in that video bucket. That, of course, is more expensive to process and not really what we want to see. So we'll have to look at those customers and try to get them to properly mount their transponder and become a fully transponder-based transaction account.
That last number is interesting. 13% either didn't mount it properly, or they lost it, or something happened, and so they're still going back to the toll by plate image reading to get the tolls. It's kind of interesting that 1 out of 8 fall in that category. So, okay, we do have a few questions that have come in. And the first one I'll ask, are the agencies tracking those individuals who are using their smartphone apps to manage their tolls? And if so, have you seen an increase in the usage of this technology to pay toll transactions? I'm not sure how much, I'm not sure how much we get in Florida. And Mark, I'm not sure how much you get from the apps up there in Pennsylvania. Is it used very much?
We're pretty new to that game as well. So we've only had
Okay.
it in play probably for the last 9 months at best. And we certainly do track usage on it. And it is going up, but we're hoping that that'll also be the gateway for toll-by-plate customers as well, with some pre-registered accounts and things like that. So we're hoping to ramp it up and then market it better and get better usage out of it.
Okay. The next one, more around the mass transit, which is not hugely used here in Florida, but I'll ask it, I'll bring it back to you, Nicola. You can start. What impact do you expect to see in traffic from commuters who normally use mass transit and now decide to drive their vehicle? Also impact from an HOV to a single user because of the COVID impact.
Yeah.
And I know Sunrail doesn't really serve a toll road, but just out of thinking about it, how many people will get out of those mass transits and jump into the cars?
Sure, and I think that goes to the larger point. While we look and say, you know, some aspect of personnel, especially in, you know, professional services type areas, may go to more telecommuting and work from home on a permanent or semi-permanent basis, and we'll lose that traffic. But there are other aspects of the traffic that are going to change. You know, those that are transit dependent, they will continue to use transit that's available. Those that use it as an option and continue to have to travel to a work environment, they may use our facilities. So I think there's a lot of data gathering and analysis to be done, because trip purpose, you know, we all track trip purpose, and it is going to be even more important as we look at where the recoveries are and where the recoveries might not be. You know, it's easy to talk about out-of-state recreational type travel, but what are those in that commuter base that are going to be work from home? What are those in the commuter base that are in more blue collar type areas that we won't see a change in the travel patterns, because their job requires them to physically go to a plant or, you know, wherever they conduct their business. So I think there's a lot of information to glean, and yeah, the transit is going to be an aspect of that. How big it is, I think we'll have to do a lot more data gathering and analysis to determine.
Okay, next question here, and this one is going to be a very broad one, but I'd be curious to see not only how you respond to this, but overall on your TNR. Do you have any market research information or feedback about what the former cash-paying customers' reaction was when they confronted the AET, as far as what did you get maybe at your customer service center or any type of other feedback? And did they just drive through and become video customers? And then Mark touched on this last part. Was there a bump in SunPass, ePass, or EasyPass? We already saw that Mark said there's a 5% jump for the EasyPass. So, you know, that coupled, I think, with your TNR consultants, and how are they going to look at even doing their traffic numbers moving forward?
So what we're finding from our research, Chris, is that those folks that are choosing not to get a transponder are making a conscious choice not to do so. Because if you reach the point to where you're trying to get that last 5, 6, 7% that aren't your occasional users, it's because they don't want one. And they don't want one because they don't want you taking the $35 from them right up front. They don't like the tracking aspect of it. They don't want to be tied to a transponder is really what we're finding. And we're trying to overcome that with some other programs, but it's very difficult if they've made the decision that a transponder is not for them. to get them to do that. So what they've done is continued to use the system. Some of them have continued to use the system. It seems like the majority of them are paying their invoices, and they've gotten X amount of invoices that have not chosen to take the discount and signed up for Easy Pass.
At CFX, we're seeing a steady increase in transponder sales. However, globally, our percentage of our transactions by transponder versus cash versus pay by plate seem to be pretty steady regardless. I mean, we are seeing a steady increase in sales, but it's not moving the needle yet. We'll see.
We're seeing the same thing as Laura just mentioned, and I do think that there's an important aspect of the unbanked and the underbanked that we need to remember, and it's those that and part of our marketing is going to be making sure that folks know that they can manage their account as closely as they want to. Some of them just can't open up an account and put $40 on the account and let it auto load when it hits a replenishment cycle. And so if they think that that's the only option that they have, then we're going to have a tough time convincing them. But if they know that they can manage their account as they can, if they only have cash, if they only have a certain amount that they can put on when they're going to be using the facilities, we can manage that too. And so we're actually looking at our marketing efforts and redoubling those efforts to make sure folks know that they have the ability to manage in that way.
And I would think until you get to a stable type environment, you're really not going to be able to tell what's pulling and pushing things because it's changing daily. And until you find out that you're back on a steady stream of some sorts, the new norm, then you can start predicting or trying to figure out what to do to influence people. So now that, you know, Nicola and Laura, you have your attendance back on the roadside, you're collecting the cash. Have you started to look into any type of cashless transaction on the roadside to even maybe eliminate the interaction between the people on the roadside?
Well, as I mentioned in my presentation, it is time for us to look at our 25-year plan, and we're updating that. We'll have a whole chapter on how we're looking at all electronic tolling. So that whole collection method will be studied over the next 12 months. So it's a little bit too early to say how that's going to shape up because there's a lot of research that goes into it. We'll see.
Okay. Let me see here. So now that the interoperability, I know that CFX is interoperable with Easy Pass, and Nicola, you made a point in your presentation that you're interoperable with Easy Pass. What do you see as possible it's obviously a customer benefit, but how do you think it will affect, because are the numbers large enough to affect how you collect it, or is there going to be some type of impact to your operation on your facilities because of collecting that? Or you've been doing it for a little while, so you may have a little more data than what Nicola does, who just recently kind of rolled it out.
I can just give you a rough idea of the benefit, and I'm sure for the Turnpike it'll be even greater. For the Easy Pass fee that we pay to become a member and to process all of this transaction, we collect about $6 million a year in Easy Pass transaction. That greatly exceeds any cost incurred for the processing of those transactions. So I think it's a win-win for all the states involved. And I'm so excited that Florida's Turnpike is going to participate, and I think they'll see a boost in revenues because of it.
I think certainly as opening that up as an additional payment option for folks, I think is extremely important. I think it will make our operations much more efficient. I think anything that we can do to avoid having to process an invoice for an out-of-state customer who may happen to be an Easy Pass customer, I think is well worth it. So yeah, Laura had shared some of her statistics with me before. There is no doubt in my mind that this is the right way for us to go, and we're very excited about it.
Just I'll ask one last question, and this is probably more the looking in the magic ball. But you guys have updated your traffic numbers. You're starting to look at revenue, what's going to happen over the next several years. What kind of discussions did you have about the commute? People changing patterns, maybe even working at different times, less carpooling. I don't know, but what were some of the ideas that were thrown around that could impact your TNR reports for the future? Because it will be a different time, and it'll have to be adjusted as time goes on. And I know Laura had a talk with you one time where you said we're just going to have to keep monitoring it and adjusting as things change. So I'd be curious to see what thoughts went through the discussion panel to come up with the new numbers.
Well, first you have to realize what percentage of your traffic overall is really commuter traffic, right? And for CFX system-wide, it's about 11%. So of that 11%, what percent of those people are going to change their commute patterns after, the impact of COVID? And so that's the million-dollar question. I think we landed at a pretty conservative place on 2.5% decrease permanently. I mean, that's quite significant. I hope that it's not that high, but time will tell. And of course, we're monitoring it month by month. Right now, traffic is outpacing our projections at this point.
That's good.
Yeah, so for us, we will revise our revenue forecast in the August-September timeframe. So really, we're doing a deep dive on the data that we're getting. Obviously, week over week changes quite a bit, and fortunately, it's been changing in a positive direction. But certainly, there's a lot of external factors that could change that. So we really do want to take a full look at the year end as it finishes and do that full assessment. As it relates to the commuter traffic, certainly as you look at the Turnpike system, a blended system throughout the state, 3 out of 4 of our trips are business related, whether they are commercial, whether they're a commute, whether they are some type of office trip. They are business related. Really where we think where we're looking the most closely are those recreational, how tourism is impacted over the long term and what that does to our traffic. That is a much larger piece of the puzzle.
For us, commercial is pretty much by all statistics back. So we have the trucks are back, which is good. Weekends are rough. Weekends are still pretty bad. So we need Pirates back, we need the Phillies back, we need soccer tournaments, we need to be getting kids in and out of universities. That's going to bring the weekend stuff back. And I think to Laura and Nicola's point, we are concerned about commuter patterns through the week, and especially for us in the greater Philadelphia area and what that looks like, because for us that's our bread and butter. So we're waiting and watching to see, and hopefully if for our purposes, hopefully schools come back and we get K through 12 back. We think we get a larger share of the commuters back. If they're paused again, then we're concerned that we've almost hit sort of a number that we're going to stay at until we can get schools back to get folks back commuting again. So that's sort of what we're watching very closely.
All right. Well, I want to close out here. And again, I want to thank Laura, Nicola, and Mark for joining us today and giving us insights on your agency's viewpoint of what happened when COVID became a reality and what you're looking at to the future. We all hope the traffic comes back rapidly. We hope that all things come out better as we move through the latter part of this year. But again, thank you for joining us.